Is affirmative action on the chopping block? The Supreme Court could finally abolish the race-based practice that's been screwing over high-achieving Asian American students for decades. John Wang is one of the people suing and claims that affirmative action is to blame for his recent rejection from top-tier colleges and universities, despite his near-perfect SAT scores. John Wang now telling his story to Laura Ingram in a new Fox Nation special.
The top tier schools I applied to were MIT, Caltech, Princeton, Harvard, Carnegie Mellon, and UC Berkeley. Guidance counselors, they all told me that it's tougher to get in, especially as an Asian American. I just took it as gospel. I had a 20% chance of gaining admission to Harvard as an Asian American, and then a 95% chance as an African American.
So where does affirmative action stand right now in the court?
Affirmative action is still the law of the land, okay? The problem is that we now have a world of equity where there's no real equality. And what he was saying is he's got a 20% chance of getting into Harvard. If you're African American with those same numbers, you've got a 95% chance of getting in. I mean, the scales are so tipped against the qualified people in terms of, what are we doing? We're trying to make up for whatever happened in the past. Get over it and start all over again. Mm-hmm. It's taking away the incentive of people.
If you just did it by scores, only scores, would you have, what, a majority of Asian undergraduate people in Harvard?
Can I just jump in? Because that's what Harvard did. They call it a fake study, whatever. Harvard wrote down on a piece of paper that if they were to do that, 43% of their student body would be Asian Americans. And they deny that. That's one of the key pieces of evidence in this case that has worked its way up through the Supreme Court. I think that this Supreme Court, is going to do away with this.
Wow.
Unfortunately for students everywhere, I think that the schools are going to find some sneaky way to get around it. They'll call it something else. They'll say that they're looking at other things. However, I think these students are going to set a precedent that's not only for colleges, but think about that school down, Thomas Jefferson High School down in Virginia. One of the top schools. This is also an issue for Asian Americans at that school. And those parents have banded together and said, we are not going to allow this. What I think will be very interesting when the Supreme Court decides this, it will happen first at universities, I think then to the private schools, and then what happens in corporate America. Because it could be a real effect all the way down.
Mr. Greg Gutfeld.
God, he's such a Wang. Yo, the guy got a 1590, and you should have taken it again. 1600, buddy. That's what I got. No, actually, I'm kidding. The reality is this guy is obviously very smart, and he might be too smart for college. Yeah. Get a job at SpaceX. Right. Don't waste your time.
Just go on.
It's obvious when you develop quotas for some people, others are going to get elbowed out. And in this day and age, Asians are not getting a fair piece of the pie anymore because the pie is finite. It's kind of interesting that, there's this, we all talk about how cultures are different. And you better not culturally appropriate. But then we apply the prism of equity on cultures, which are impossible because they're different. Like every culture is different. You can't expect the same outcome for this type of person and this type of person and this type of person. Sorry, it's not true. It won't happen, okay? But why would you want to go to a place that doesn't want you there? Take your brain elsewhere, like DeVry.
Or Stanford.
Stanford's like a poor man's DeVry.
Okay. Berkeley, that's where you want to get in.
Yes.
If you were running one of these universities, what would your admissions policy be based on?
A whole host of issues. And one of them is obviously grades. I think that it does make sense when you look at the data on this. Americans do generally support wanting to promote diversity on campuses. But then where it gets tricky is that the majority opposes explicit consideration of race. So those two things don't add up. And that's why you have states like California and Michigan, both not red states, that have banned affirmative action on the basis of race. I thought that was something interesting. Gavin Newsom could comment on more. When this decision comes down, I'm really looking forward to seeing how Clarence Thomas and Justice Sotomayor talk about it, because they both have openly benefited. They've talked about getting race-based affirmative action, got them to Yale Law School, and Clarence Thomas got a scholarship to Holy Cross for college. That was only for racial-based minorities. And he's talked about the benefits of that, and that he's sitting on the Supreme Court today because of affirmative action. And over the years, and people do evolve, and this happens to a lot of people, he now doesn't think that it's necessary anymore. So if you take your position, Judge, where you just say, get over it, and I don't think that we can get over slavery and the systemic challenges that still face people of color in this country. But if that is the case that he's going to make, I think it will be riveting to see that, especially in contrast to a colleague of his, and they're apparently very close friends, who feels differently about the benefits of race-based affirmative action.
Did you go to DeVry University?
No, I went to Stanford. No, I'm just kidding. I didn't go to Stanford. I wouldn't have gotten in. I wouldn't
Because you're
have.
white?
No, because I didn't have good enough grades.
Don't listen to what I'm saying.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.